HTTV in association with Absolute Warehouse Services. Welcome to Terrier Talk. Today we're going to preview the game against Nottingham Forest on Sunday. I'm Adam Tomlinson and I'm delighted to be joined by Head of Football Operations Leigh Bromby and Stephen Chicken from the Huddersfield Examiner. How are you both? You okay?
Very well, thank you, Adam. And you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Broms, you all right?
Excellent, Adam. Thank you.
Fantastic. So we'll start off today's show speaking about the game against Wigan Athletic. Obviously, the result that we didn't want. Stephen, first of all with you, what do you think went wrong in that game?
Quite a lot of things, I think it's fair to say. As Danny Cowley's alluded to, they had all the possession, 70% possession, but in the final third in particular, they just couldn't get that penetration. Danny spoke in his press conference about the fact that they would break through the first line of the defence and then get to the second line and then end up going backwards behind the first line again and give themselves, more to do than they really needed to. I think there was a bit of a lack of fluency. I don't think it helped, obviously, having Fraser Campbell and Steve Mounier both out of the team and out of the squad with injury meant that Karlan Grant was playing up front where he's not played for a long time, and Emil Smith-Rowe was playing on the left for the first time where he's normally played at number 10. And I wonder if a little bit of unfamiliarity because of those injuries might have played a part as well.
Broms, obviously you've been in and around the training ground, watching training at the friendly games. Did it surprise you how wrong it went, how far away it was from the performances that we put in leading up to the restart?
Yeah, I think on the basis of that, 100%, I think, the training, the friendly matches have been really positive. The performances were excellent. So yeah, in terms of that, a real surprise. With my experience in football, not a surprise though, just because, some days just don't work. And I think we just spoke about there, the penetration, the things that I've seen the work being done. So I've seen it, I've seen what they prepared, the process was excellent. And then we just couldn't replicate that in the game. And let's be honest, we were under par. But yeah, the staff and the manager and the players probably couldn't have prepared better under the circumstances or worked any harder. I think some key personnel, which we just mentioned, were missing to that would usually play. But on the whole, yeah, I think we actually underperformed on the day.
Do you think that an empty stadium, I know obviously we had the friendly games where we were trying to get used to that situation, but being at home in an empty stadium, do you think that had a big impact on it, Broms?
I hope so. I hope that was maybe a reason we could use. I don't like, looking at excuses. I think, the old cliches of it's the same for both teams and things like that. But it is different. We have to deal with that. We have to deal with this current situation. We're prepared in the stadium. So we trained at the stadium on the Wednesday. We prepared with friendlies. So we had 3 friendlies to make sure the lads were prepared for that sort of atmosphere. And like I said, I think on the day we did underperform regardless of being in an empty stadium or a full one, whether that had effects, we actually didn't perform.
And Steve, obviously you were in the press conference with Danny Cowley yesterday. He was very certain on the fact that there is no home advantage anymore. Obviously with no fans, you're just playing in basically a neutral stadium almost. There's the comforts, obviously, of the dressing room and whatnot, but that's really as far as that advantage goes. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think only the players can say, and I think some clubs and some teams will be able to adapt to it better than others for sort of a host of reasons. But I think we've seen already in the Championship and in the Premier League that there have been some odd results that have gone very much against the form, and particularly, as you say, that the home advantage seems to be on the wane. So I think, as we've touched on our podcast that we did, I think the difference probably feels that little bit more pronounced to the home team, because if you're the away team, you're going there and it's just, well, we'll just crack on. You know, it's unfamiliar surroundings, even with a crowd there. But at home, it's everything you're used to, but all different. So it just, I imagine, feels just that bit more pronounced.
Feel the power.
Yeah, and the players have obviously been back in this week working hard. I'll just touch upon some news that obviously broke via the club this week, which was the retain list. Broms, first of all, with you, it's great to see so many players who would have been out of contract in the summer, and of course the loanees as well, agree to stay on for that extra month.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've seen this with a lot of clubs. It's new to everyone. So let's be honest, we're not going to get everything perfect. We've gone into a situation that has never happened before. So yeah, we're really grateful for the players that have extended to July, and that they've shown the confidence in us and the support that they want to play and help us within this situation. So yeah, that's been pleasing.
And obviously, Steve, it's a big boost, isn't it, for Huddersfield Town, for the Cowleys as well, to have that many players still going into that final month, which will be massively important.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the other clubs around the Championship, and a lot of clubs have lost a lot more players than the two that Huddersfield Town have lost, and it's, I think we may come on to this, you know, the applications going in for a couple more players to be added to the squad as well, which I think should help bolster at least some options for Danny Cowley.
Of course, and obviously there are two players who are leaving the club before the end of the season, at the end of June. Broms, what was the thinking behind that? We'll start with Danny Simpson first of all.
Yeah, so the situation with Danny, which I think some people have seen, was he wanted a different option to the rest of the players. So there was a verbal agreement. We were really worried that we didn't have enough strength in that position. So Danny expressed his views that he didn't want to play beyond June. He requested that it be paid for that month, and then verbally I agreed it with him. We got that wrong. We went back to him on the Saturday morning, so the timing wasn't great, and we didn't feel that was the right thing within this current situation. You know, we've got staff here who are furloughed, then to go and pay a player extra money that the other players were not receiving was not the right thing to do. So regardless of the timing, which I take on board, that was not perfect. No one here is saying we got this right. What I would say is it wouldn't have been fair. We made the moral decision towards our values that we thought was the right decision. We wish Danny all the best. He's always give up 100% for us, and wish him all the best. And that was his decision. And he didn't want to play that extra month without the financial reward. The other players that have stayed, they have not requested that. So they're staying here for no financial reward. They're staying here because they want the best for the club and they want to help us in this situation. In terms of other things that have been around it, with Phil, it wasn't Phil's decision. My role here is to make those decisions. He supports me 100%. So Phil had nothing to do with that situation.
And Camille Guevara obviously is going back to Liverpool as well.
Yeah, so Camille has got an injury. We felt he wouldn't he hasn't played any games over this period. He wouldn't be fit in the next month to be able to play games. So again, financially within this situation, it didn't make commercial sense for us as a club to do that. And that's why we made that decision, because he has got an injury as well. And again, Cam has done fantastic for us. He's got unbelievable potential. It's worked well for him, the loan. He's had a lot of games. As a goalkeeper at such a young age, to play championship football has been a great loan for him. It's been great for Liverpool. It's been great for Huddersfield Town. So that's a real positive one. And we'd like to wish him the best as well.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that both the players had a big impact in their own way this season and have helped us, of course.
Yeah, 100%. Danny Simpson came to the club when we were in a real difficult position. He has helped us to get away from that relegation, not as far away as all those places as far as we'd like to be. But yeah, I would put on record that I'd like to thank him for his efforts and helping us to achieve a better position than when he came.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a difficult situation, obviously, COVID-19 pandemic and the uncertainty around players' contracts. Just in your role, how difficult has that been to manage? I know all the other clubs are in the same situation, but not knowing anything regarding next season, not knowing what league we're going to be in, with all those matters considered, how difficult has this been?
I think the one positive for me has been being through that experience before as a player. So coming into this role and also understanding, sitting in those players' shoes and being in that position before. So I finished playing through injury. One game and you're done, and that's your career finished. So I really do have empathy for the players, and I sit in their shoes. I also now have got a role where I've got to protect the club, and this pandemic has affected football and financially. So I have to protect the club, and I have to safeguard the club, and that comes down to financial decisions. So I've got a great understanding of what the players are going through. I have a responsibility to this club to make sure that we're in a good position as well. And I hope people, when you make decisions, there's always two sides. And we made that decision for the best of this club. And that's what we have to do.
And Steve, obviously with Danny Simpson's eventual departure, the right-back slot is open for someone to really come and grasp it. Who do you think is the best fit for that position at this moment in time?
It would seem, before we go into the Forest game, that D'Amico Dehaney would probably be the natural fit. He came on for Danny Simpson in that game, and Danny Cowley has alluded to the fact that DD probably would have got that chance earlier in the season if he hadn't had injuries and illness. I know that he missed all of pre-season and the start of the season with an injury. He played against Leeds at the home game back in December, and then I think he picked up illness and ended up missing out again. One of the players a couple of the players who played in his absence and in Danny Simpson's absence when he was injured in December were Janino Bacuna, who had a bit of a run at right back, and also Romani Edmonds-Green did the 90 minutes against Charlton. Romani wasn't able to be in the squad against Wigan, but he is one of the players that they're looking for. I know that Town are looking for the dispensation to get him into the squad. So he's an option as well at right back. He actually did well at Charlton. So I think he's primarily been playing at centre back for Swindon, but we've seen that he can do a job. He's certainly got the pace to do the job at right back.
Brom, speaking about DD first, obviously when you were academy manager, you brought him into the club under the new model that we put in place. What have you seen from him, and how have you seen him develop during his time with us?
Yeah, I think Didi's got all the natural abilities athletically to play fullback, the modern day fullback, so overlapping. He can receive to pass forward, which we saw against the Wigan when he came on. He's positive. Like all young players, they're still on that journey, so there's loads of bits they've got to piece together, and that's what within the academy I feel the staff and the model that we have allows them. So he went out on a loan to Boston. That was to teach him, playing Saturday, Tuesday, all the psychological parts of being in a dressing room, having to win, the basics and the fundamentals around the game, which most young players have to learn. The difficulty with that is learning it at championship level is a risk. So we have to provide that within their experience. I feel D'Amico's really developed whilst he's been with us on those things. So his defensive responsibilities, his responsibility to the team, his game understanding has really come on. And I do feel, and the club feel confident that he can play a role for us in this period. Stephen, I agree with you with Romani. His position is, number one position is central defence, but I feel now when you're looking at squads like ourselves, when you've got players that can play right back at such a good level, when he played against Charlton, it's an absolute bonus for us, and it's a real benefit. So we've got, that is why we've gone for approach the EFL about that, because one, we are short in that position, and two, we do feel confident in him as well. We do feel he could really add value to these next few games.
And speaking about those two, obviously Didi and Rams, they've both been out on loans to gain first team experience. I know some supporters might be a little bit surprised, obviously, with Didi going to Boston and Rams, I think last season at Brighouse Town, but it's all part of the model, isn't it, Broms, of giving them different experiences at different levels to help different parts of their game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the FA spend millions of pounds researching player development, and what they did come up with was it's not the level that they play, it's playing against men before they're 21. So if you look at that, if the FA are researching things like that, we have to follow this, and we have to be mindful of those things. So Romani going to Brighouse was fantastic. He's miles better than that level. But his learning experience whilst he was there, if you spoke to him now, he would say was a key component to helping him at Swindon perform so well, and also performing for us. And there's a little bit of pride around it. So we've had to do a lot of work with the players, supporters alike, and people understanding why would we send one of our potential first team players, and Romani will be a first team player for us. Why would we send him to Brighouse? But it is part of what we are doing here. And when you see his confidence, when you see how he's growing as a person, as simple as this might sound, Romani having to contact the manager instead of asking me or Broms, what time are we meeting? All these little things, preparing himself professionally for that game, and having to go to the game himself. Not everything's put on for him. All these experiences that we value, particularly in that development and his learning. So yeah, that was a successful one for us, and I do feel he's, one for the future for us, definitely.
The company name is Manrichem. We are process engineering and design contractors. We are the hidden glue that makes the entire world work. Innovation is an interesting subject. What we do is help people conceptualize their ideas. What we always say is that if somebody comes through our door with an idea, that we can normally find a way of helping them. taking people's ideas and making it a reality is what we do.
And Steve, as a football writer, to hear something like that and to get more of an insight, I guess, into why certain loan moves take place, different to what other clubs do as well, that must be really insightful for you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the academy restructure that Town did a few years ago is, I know, was quite controversial to some, but it's really interesting as a writer to see a club doing something different, and hopefully it's going to bear fruit. And I think we're starting to see, as you mentioned, with the deal with Jayden Brown as well earlier this season, that those players will hopefully show that it was the right decision, and you'll start getting the dividends from it. But I mean, everyone wants to see young players coming through. I think we've seen that with Lewis O'Brien, obviously, who's been arguably player of the season. Certainly in my book, he's been player of the season, having enjoyed a loan spell at Bradford City last year. That all right, Bradford, had their own struggles, but Lewis has talked about the fact that made him a man, he feels, and prepared him to play at the level he has this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Proms, we touched upon, obviously, the applications going in for the loan players to come back. So Romani Edmonds-Green and Josh Koroma as just two of them. How exciting was that when the EFL told us that we could potentially bring those players back? I think Ryan Schofield was another one. How much of a boost is that for us going into these last 8 games, if they are obviously accepted?
Huge, yeah. But I mean, our concerns were the amount of games we have to play within this period it's not normal, and we accept that, and we're all dealing with it. We're not complaining about it, but to do that with a limited squad or not your full squad is hard. So those players will be needed, no doubt, because playing that amount of games and at the level we need to play those games at, the players have to be fresh. So Danny's challenge and something that he's really good at is probably mixing that squad. So getting the balance right of that freshness of, looking at the Birmingham game. So who starts against Nottingham Forest? You can only do that if you've got options within your squad. If you've only got one right back, then that becomes really difficult. So for us, I think it's going to be really, really important that those players are available.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, it must be quite exciting to have the likes of Josh Koroma back, for example, another option that could help us going into those last 8 games. Yeah,
good to have another option in the final third who's a bit different, a bit more direct, I think, than some of the other options that they had on the bench against Wigan. I mean, Danny Cowley's talked about, he's said before, Josh Koroma's finishing is as good as Carline Grant's. There's just other bits of the game that he needs to work on, which is why he was at Rotherham. But I think having that extra option who can play either on the wing or at centre forward could be really useful.
Yeah, and obviously now looking ahead to this weekend's game against Nottingham Forest, Broms, you've obviously been at the training ground. How has training looked this week?
Excellent. I think when the sun's out, everyone's got a smile on the face. So training this week's been positive. They've reacted well from obviously the disappointment. So there was a bit of hangover from that, but Danny's got him in a really good place. And yeah, everyone's really looking forward to the game. Everyone's looking forward to the challenge. And I think we're in a really good position with the players we have. We can go and compete with anyone, particularly when that, I think, Stephen, you mentioned before about that penetration in the front players maybe not clicking. When they click, like when we played against Bristol, for example, there's not many better. There's not many better teams, and that's why I think the supporters themselves should be really confident, because when we do click, and let's hope it was just one off there, we can challenge any team in this league.
And this has been the final full week, obviously, where we've got fixtures. We've got no fixtures, sorry. Before then, we play almost Saturday, Tuesday, right until the end. In terms of being on the pitch, how vital could this week be, just as extra fitness work and preparation ready for what is going to be a gruelling last 8 games?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that sort of analysis. It's been the last week we knew we could get some real tactical work into the players and some key information. Once we get beyond Sunday, it becomes a little bit like tournament football. So the recovery, the nutrition, all the things we've got in place and the support services around the players become key. Getting that message across is difficult then, because players are tired, they're going into games, there's a quick turnaround all the time. So our staff are going to be key during this period to make sure the players are getting that message really clearly. And let's be honest, Danny and Nicky are two people that have won a lot of games. So the positivity is that these guys know how to win games, and they know how to create a good environment. They know how to create that positivity around the team. So 100% confident in them and the staffing and the facilities that we have, that we can achieve what we need to.
Yeah, and obviously that starts with Nottingham Forest on Sunday. Steve, obviously Forest are in the playoff spots. What do you expect from them? Because we played very well against them at the John Smith Stadium just before Christmas.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's a Forest fan, and I think he's been a bit frustrated about their lack of consistency at times. I know that they've dropped quite a lot of late points, or at least it seems that way from talking to him. And I know they did obviously against Sheffield Wednesday last week, but on their day they're a really good team. They're not, up that top end of the table for no reason. And I think especially up the right, where you got Joe Lolly and Cash as well, coming from right back. Obviously, we know Joe Lolly well. It's a hell of a threat up the left-hand side. And I think Harry Toffolo, Lewis O'Brien, potentially Carl and Grant could have their hands full there.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like they're a side when they're completely in their flow, they're a real force to be reckoned with in this league. Yeah,
exactly. And as I say, on their day they can beat anyone, but the Championship is an odd league, and with Town have already beaten them once this season, as we talked about, and looked good doing it over Christmas. So you genuinely never know in this division, really.
I was going to say, even in this division, but in these circumstances as well, obviously it's their first game back at the City Ground with no supporters. With all these circumstances thrown in, is it just a case of anything could happen on the day?
I think so. And, we've seen that Town in some away games this season have actually done better against bigger teams, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think of that Brentford game in particular in November, which I think is one of the best Town performances, certainly the best away performance they've put on this season. They didn't give the best attacking team in the division a sniff. They got a goal on the counter, and it was a great win. They also played really well for 60 minutes against Fulham. They did, and there's been other games where they've played well as well. I'm just looking through the list here. But then at the same time, there's also been games that have perhaps been quite disappointing. Preston and Bristol City, I think of in particular, who are teams sort of towards that top end of the table that they have underperformed against as well. So I think all in all, it's about getting the full 90-minute performance, because there's been games where away games where Town have done really well for an hour or 45 minutes, but ended up getting beaten or drawing because of what they did in the other sort of half an hour.
And Broms, obviously, there's just 1 point between us and the relegation zone. Is it felt in the dressing room, on the training pitch, how important, how huge these last 8 games are for the football club?
Yeah, 100%. I think, everyone feels it. It's not where we want to be. And Steve, you just spoke there about that inconsistency. And let's be honest, that's probably the reason why we are in that position. We've shown in performances that we could be a top-end Championship club, and we've shown in some, which you've just rightly pointed out. So Bristol, if you use the Bristol games, the Bristol away and the Bristol at home, they're so far apart in terms of performance, and that's something that we've not done well this season, and I feel that could be part of obviously the pre-season and Danny come into it late. I do feel it's one of his strengths that he is nailing down all the time, the importance of, you know, winning these games and the position we're in and improving that consistency. I think that has improved a little bit throughout the season. Danny's been able to spend a bit more time with the players over this period. So that's what we will be looking to do in the next 8 games, to make sure, as you just said, against Fulham for first 60 minutes, against Brentford, we were really hard to beat. And then we can look dangerous with those attacking players as well.
Steve, I'll just leave you with the final thoughts ahead of this weekend's game.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first game that I'm gonna be at. I'm doing the away games, Mel's doing the home games, so it'll be interesting to be there and see what it's actually like on the day. But on the pitch, I mean, as we say, you just never know, not just from this division, but because of you know that inconsistency. But Danny Cowley has never lost 3 games in a row as a manager, or 3 league games in a row as a manager. So they'll be looking to avoid that, and obviously there'll be a close eye on results elsewhere on Saturday as well.
Absolutely. Steve Broms, thank you for joining us. Huddersfield Town fans, thank you very much for watching. You can obviously watch the game on Sunday on Sky Sports Football or on iFollow HTAFC. Thank you very much.